Following claims of a smear campaign against the family of Stephen Lawrence today, there are fresh allegations that political activists and other family justice campaigners were deliberately targeted by undercover officers with a view to discredit them. The brother of a man who died in police custody has said if the claims are true, they're a disaster. It comes amidst growing calls for a judge-led public inquiry into the allegations against Scotland Yard. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Guy Smith.
He was hit over the head with a police baton and died. Brian Douglas was a 33-year-old boxing promoter who was stopped for driving erratically in 1995. Today, the same undercover police officer who claimed he was deployed to smear Stephen Lawrence's family now says he also tried to undermine the campaign to properly investigate Brian Douglas's death. This was the reaction from Brian's brother today after hearing the allegations.
Well, I think it's absolutely disastrous that if the allegations are proven, that we have the police force who's here to protect us, that is seemingly infiltrating families during a period of time while they're grieving in order to smear their families for their own interest.
Charles Loft was a volunteer in the 1990s for an organisation helping Londoners who were allegedly victims of police wrongdoing. Again, it's claimed by another former undercover officer that his group was targeted.
Just the idea of a police spy having access to confidential records involving hundreds of cases in which the police are accused of wrongdoing, that in itself flirts with perverting the course of justice at the very least, and there needs to be a full public inquiry into what went on.
These are all currently allegations from a small group of former police officers. So what is the truth and how do you get there? Currently there are two reviews. One, an internal investigation into the controversial tactics used by undercover police officers, overseen by the Chief Constable of Derbyshire, and supervised by the police watchdog, the IPCC. And another, by a senior barrister looking into police corruption, but now also investigating claims of a smear campaign against Stephen Lawrence's family. Last night, Stephen's father, Neville, said he had no confidence in these reviews and wanted something apparently more independent.
You could have a judge-led inquiry, as Neville Lawrence has suggested. There are arguments in favour of that, there are arguments against it. One option that occurs to me is that Tom Windsor of the HMIC is already conducting an investigation into these matters. It may be that that process could be accelerated.
Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary independently assesses police forces. Some of the Mayor's political opponents believe Boris Johnson, in charge of scrutinising the Met, should be more robust.
Well, I think it's time the Mayor actually took a stance on this and showed some leadership. Quite honestly, what we need now is a judicial inquiry. I always hesitate to ask for public inquiries. They're so expensive and they take so much time. But how else are we going to get anywhere near the truth?
And that is what the families who've lost loved ones want. The methods of seeking out the truth is now the centre of intense debate. Guy Smith, BBC London News.
Well, our special correspondent Kurt Barling has been following the story and joins me. How do you think these calls for a judge-led public inquiry will pan out?
Well, look, the calls for a public inquiry are just that at the moment. There are two outstanding inquiries into the Met itself. Firstly, by the Derbyshire Chief Constable, who's looking at the use of undercover officers. Secondly, the investigation into the corruption allegations in the Stephen Lawrence murder investigation originally. There are all these allegations coming out about public groups being infiltrated, doing something quite legitimate, that is scrutinising police behaviour. What they want to know is why were the police perhaps spying on them? If you look at Brian Douglas' case, if the allegations are tested and found to be true, it does beg the question of whether the coroner's inquest was actively compromised. I think the Met Commissioner thinks at the moment there's enough. The Mayor hopes that the Home Secretary, if they decide to have a public inquiry, can be supported.
And what about for the family at the centre of this, the Lawrence family?
Well, look, this is one man's allegation at the moment. Both Neville Lawrence and Doreen Lawrence said their campaign was always for justice. What they're saying now is that the independent judge, Neville Lawrence, says should be appointed. Doreen Lawrence is saying she's written to the Met, she wants a confidence that they are going to deal with this robustly. A public inquiry is not inevitable, but I think the real test is, are these allegations investigated properly And does the public have confidence in the results?
OK, Kurt, thank you. Our special correspondent, Kurt Barling. Next, the East End.